Today, I'm speaking with Operator Starsky, a Ukrainian National Guardsman, blogger, and inspiration for everyone who is following the war and supporting a Ukrainian victory. He's created one of the most popular and original YouTube channels dedicated for the international community to understand what's going on in Ukraine. I'm not sure actually anyone really needs an introduction because most people will already be watching his channel if they're watching mine. Welcome to Silicon Curtain. Please like and subscribe if you like the speakers that we have on the channel and our great materials. Do please consider also becoming a patron or buy me a coffee to support the work of the channel. OS, it is fantastic to welcome you back for the third time to the channel.
Hello, my friend. It's very nice to see you. Shame we didn't meet during your visit to Ukraine because I got deployed, but hopefully we will have opportunity to see each other in future.
We definitely will. I mean, the main thing is you got back in one piece. And of course, it gives us a great excuse to come back again. And that's something I have shared with the channel, that there will be a part two. The time and date is still to be confirmed and the format, but we will be running another event. And we hope it'll be as ambitious and successful as the first one. But this is an extraordinary week to be speaking. Not only have we passed the 600-day mark of Russia's 3-day invasion, which is extraordinary and kind of terrifying at the same time, but also it seems to be a pivotal moment with news from Berdyansk, from the Black Sea, and Avdiivka. Does it feel to you, being much closer to it, that we're reaching a kind of turning point?
It feels as if we're on the right track, I would say, because there are still a lot of things we have to finish. And despite Russian army being completely ridiculous, despite Russian state being a complete joke, but still they have plenty of artillery, bombers, and cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles, and personnel. And we also lose our men, our brothers and sisters. That's why it's not an easy walk one way or another. We're fighting against the main reason for creation of NATO. So there's still a lot of things that we have to finish, but we will be victorious. It's 100%. Russia cannot stand against the whole world that supports Ukraine. Yesterday, the European Union decided to approve $50 billion of support to Ukraine for the next 4 years. And Russia is not being supported by anybody, except for their closest allies, North Korea, Iran, Syria.
And earlier in the year, there was a worry, I think, that many more drones were appearing on the Russian side, of course, supplied by the Chinese. Their foreign minister has admitted this week that they are pretty much 100% supplied by China in that capacity. I remember talking about night sights and uniforms appearing on the front line. And of course, North Korean artillery shells. So it was a worry that somehow they might make up for their lack of industrial capacity and expertise and materiel by getting this from their allies. It does seem now that irrespective of this, they cannot combine it with sensible strategies. They cannot deploy this equipment that effectively. And as you say, they can cause damage. They do, unfortunately, exact a price on Ukraine, but it doesn't seem like they're particularly effective at using this equipment. And indeed, some of that equipment, as has been reported, the number of duds from artillery shells has increased. It doesn't seem that their allies are really, helping them to turn the tide.
I completely agree on that. What Russians do currently is they just prolong their own suffering here in Ukraine before the inevitable defeat and probably upcoming collapse of Russia, because we cannot feel safe in the world with terrorist federation in its current state.
that collapse of Russia, that is something I go to a lot of events, at least one or two a week. There are a lot of silly questions come up. There's some good questions sometimes as well, but I always ask that question: are we planning for a Russian defeat? Are we planning for the collapse of the Terror Federation? And I can tell you, I don't think anyone is seriously trying to imagine what that looks like. I went to the first event, actually, where someone was trying to articulate what kind of entity Russia should become. Unfortunately, that person was Mikhail Khodorkovsky. It's interesting that he's thinking about it. He's one of the few Russian oppositionists who does genuinely seem to be thinking about what kind of Russia should emerge from this. He said some good things about the obligations Russia has to pay for all the damage it's caused. And he's talking about sort of no strings attached payments, probably taken from, hydrocarbon sales. So that's kind of good. On the other hand, his plans for Russia seem to me distinctly naive and unrealistic. But there's a deafening silence. No one is saying what kind of Russia we want to see at the end of this. Is that a concern that it's only Ukrainians who are really articulating what kind of neighbor they need to have to feel secure?
I think it must be a concern for everybody because people around the world should understand that Russia in its current state means that we, and I'm talking about the free world, I'm talking about democratic countries, we will have to resist their informational warfare, their hybrid warfares, their terrorist acts for unknown period of time until it's changed. In its current state, it poses a threat to the civilized world, and if we have some sort of ceasefire with the terrorist federation, we will have to continue protecting our countries and our citizens against Russian terrorism for years. The only way to stop this is to completely reboot Russian Federation and either denazify it or make them part of the international community. I'm talking democratic community. Not the way West tried to change Russia in previous decades, because it didn't work. Russian people cannot be changed like that. So something must be done, and I think it must be a not like they will change themselves maybe someday. No, we gotta think about it today. Everybody should, because they are dangerous. And in the world where we are like having ceasefire with Russia, we will still have to face poisonings. We will still have to face assassinations, destruction of infrastructure in other countries, Russian private military companies, and things like that. So, and of course, the main thing is Russian imperialism, this ideology of Russian supremacy. It will not stop. People must understand that this is the danger, and Russia in its current state must not exist if we want peace on Earth, basically.
And that is incredibly important. We did an episode on the channel, which I really, want as many people to see as possible. It was with a BBC correspondent who is in West Africa, who is an expert on the Sahel and the areas where Wagner is most active. And she has been watching the rise of Wagner and insurrection after insurrection. Already now, I think there's been 10 or 9 or 10 insurrections in the last couple of years, all of them that have links to Wagner, and not just Russia's imperialist ambitions, it's also their business model. I mean, this came through incredibly clearly. Yes, Russian world has a geopolitical ambition, but that, to an extent, is a sort of made-up concept for the internal audience. What it covers is a business model which is rapacious. It's designed to rip money out of these societies through installing corrupt governments and getting contracts. So it's mirroring the kind of economic parasitism we see in Russia, but also they're not just driving insurrections in random countries, poor countries. They're not interested in that. They're driving these insurrections in countries that have uranium, rubies, gold. So there is a business model here. It's not just an ideology. That perhaps is just a cover, a little bit like the communist ideology was. It's a business model that if it can fund itself, it can replicate itself, and it can get more money to expand. And that seems to be the kind of process that they're adopting. And when we're familiar with that process from Russian imperial history, conquer one territory, use the resources to conquer another, they're now doing the same in Africa. And we are barely aware of it, barely paying attention, and letting them get away with it. We'll come on to the Middle East and the chaos that Russia is associated with there in a minute. But do you think we are still, to an extent, asleep at the wheel, allowing Russia to expand its rapacious, corrupt business model around the world?
I guess so, because Russia is probably the last empire. And we live in the world where empires cannot exist. Russia is the last of them. And Russia does what empires do, because in order to survive, empires have to conquer new territories and absorb resources in other countries. And this is what Putin does. And I completely agree on the business model of Russian expansion and Russian agenda in general, because Russian corrupted elites want money, they want gas, they want gold, they want resources in other countries, because this turns their life into a more convenient and more prosperous life. Everybody wants to eat good food and stuff like that, and control and have power and stuff. This is how Russia looks nowadays. And in order to have all that, they need some men that will go abroad and die for them. That's why they say that Russia is the greatest country in the world with the most richest culture and history and stuff. And everybody else suck comparing to this incredible internal microcosmos of Russian people. This is how they educate, grow this Russian supremacy in Russian people. And Russian people, of course, they're ready to go abroad and die because they believe in Russian supremacy. And there's also a lot of people inside of Russia who live poor life. People in Russia suffer. What we consider suffering and horror is normal life in Russia. And when they look at those elites, they envy. They realize that basically this is how you're supposed to live. If you want to be successful, this is exactly what you're supposed to do. This is why in the 90s, during the so-called default in Russia and over the post-Soviet Union, this is why they had a lot of bandits and mafia in every city. Basically, Russian oblasts were controlled by mafia big time, because young people who lived in poverty and all they saw every day was poverty, alcoholism, and things like that. They realized that being bandit, being mafiosi is the only way of being successful. And this is why they went, and got recruited into Russian mobs. This is why they're being recruited nowadays to Russian private military companies. So it's both ideology and this like urge to be successful, to be powerful, to control other people and have power over them. This is Russian approach.
And there's an extraordinary clip. I know sometimes we bring some fairly. I mean, some of the humor is very, very dark. But the video I watched last night is of one of these sort of Z blogger patriots and so-called Russian influencers who actually, I think, has been educated in Germany. And I don't know if you saw the video of her taunting Ukrainian students on the street, or refugees even. And it was horrific. It encompassed all of the kind of everything that you have said about the Russian values, that sort of imperial arrogance, the mocking, the inhumanity of it. But then it's combined with a series of videos. Then she gets deported. Then she gets kicked out of her institution in Germany. Then she carries on. Then she gets deported. Then she gets sent back to Russia. And she's like, yes. And then she realizes that the government is no longer paying her for her sort of Instagram stuff. And she's gone on an absolute trade, talking about how absolutely, I mean, it's far worse than this, and I'll be demonetized if I use the actual word she said, but she goes on absolute sweary tirade about how shit Russia is. And then she encourages everyone to get the hell out. I mean, it's an extraordinary kind of arc.
Yeah, that's Yulia Prokhorova. I made a video about her 2 days ago, I believe. She lived in Germany. Russians have this again because they were educated in this world of Russian supremacy. When they go to another country, they should signalize everybody that they are Russians. Okay, so other people would be afraid of them or something, and she was mocking Ukrainian refugees or students on the streets of Germany. And then apparently, because Russian supremacists are not tolerated in the democratic society, I mean, bullies and dangerous people, then local police and local authorities started asking questions, and she decided to go to Russia. She arrived, and well, yeah, living in Germany was good. It's good to boast your Russian roots when you live in a democratic world, in a peaceful country, when you have a good income and things like that, when you have opportunities. In Russia, she faced like the very horror she ran away from in the past. And yeah, her latest videos were great. Like when she started writing messages first, she started like, oh my God, like what the hell is going on? Where am I? And she started criticizing her country, her motherland, and people were like, Julia, were you hacked? Is that really you? And then she started making videos, actually. And in those videos, yeah, she explained that no, if you're a smart person, obviously she thinks of herself as one. She says, if you're a smart person, Russia is not a place for you. There's nothing for you to do here. And things will only get worse and worse and worse. So it's one of the things that are very, very typical. Why this example makes me happy is because one way or another, some Russians, no matter how lost they are, okay, when they go to the European Union, when they travel abroad to civilized countries, when they get accustomed, to all the prosperity and normal life, this is when they realize eventually that Russia is a wrong place on earth.
I wonder if she'll be live streaming as they clomp up the stairs and knock on the door and drag her off to Lefortovo. I mean, that'll be the ultimate arc of her story, won't it?
Yeah, because currently she does what Russians hate. Is she talks. People who admire Russia but live on the West for some reason, they admire this dictatorship. They don't really understand, and they don't really value the freedoms that they have. They don't understand that the very fact that they can have their own opinion, okay, and the very fact that they can talk freely about things is something that be the reason of their death or arrest in Russia. So probably we will see that. I think that there's a big chance that Prokhorova will get detained for what she says about Russia. Currently, Russians are trying to control everything in their informational space. And yeah, we'll see.
That's it. I mean, she ought to realize, and probably because she's not that bright, the fate of Girkin, Surovikin, and others. The writing must be on the wall. And then there's the guy, I've already forgotten his name, who was blown up in the cafe, which most likely was done by the FSB as well. Surely these guys realize that it's actually rather dangerous playing that game of being a Kremlin mouthpiece.
Yeah, and this is basically the destiny of all the pro-Russian and Russian supporters of the Russian terrorism and Russian supremacy, because example of Igor Girkin clearly shows that all those puppets, in the end, they will be disposed. They will be thrown away because their mission was accomplished and Russia doesn't need them anymore. And when they start talking and criticizing, and when they start speaking truth, well, yeah, that is the moment when they have all chances of being arrested and repressed. Yeah, I think Prigozhin will agree with me. Igor Girkin will, of course, agree with me. Maybe Yulia Prokhorova soon will agree with me as well.
And this is a really fascinating difference because, as we were sort of discussing in the intro, I was able to come over to Ukraine, run an event, have more than a dozen speakers. Nobody followed me. Nobody attended the event with a little tape recorder, and no one was there saying, well, you can say this and you can't say that. No one checked up on it, either before, during, or after the event. No opinions were censored. As I say, no one followed me. I mean, I have traveled widely around Russia. I have been followed before in Central Asian republics. So I kind of know what that sense is like of having the little, unmarked cars following you. And strange guys in trench coats walking up to you, and what the hell are you doing here? And this is in wartime. I would imagine that if you landed in London in the 1940s, put on an event, people would take an interest, especially as a foreigner, and they might not shut it down, but you might need some kind of special permissions. No, none of that. I mean, it validated for me that Ukraine is an absolutely free and open society. You just have to open the Kiev Independent and see a whole range of criticism of the government for a variety of issues to realize that what you guys are fighting for is the same kind of honest, transparent society that we believe that we have.
Yeah, as I said previously, Ukraine is known for this feature. We don't really like authorities. Ukraine is the land of anarchy. This is where anarchy was born, and this is where it worked. Actually, and we are fighting for democracy and for our right to criticize our government and demand better things. for our people. In Ukraine, all the decisions always come from the people towards our government, and our government will react to our demands. This is how I think it's supposed to work, right, in the civilized world. That's why, even though we are very, very much united right now, we're fighting for our freedom, for our survival, basically. But after the war is finished, you will be able to see all kinds of democratic processes in Ukraine that always involve protests and mass actions, people demanding better future and things like that, because this is how democratic society is supposed to work.
And the traces of, say, Russification will not disappear overnight. So there will be still, bureaucratic inertia. There will still be corruption, especially at the local levels. There will be all sorts of things left to fight. So you have no doubt that people are and will carry on, maybe even more so, because they'll have lost so much, they'll have sacrificed so much. They won't want to see or tolerate these kind of things continuing.
Even more than that, why I like the very idea of our refugees staying abroad for a while is because our kids will go to schools. They're already going to schools with European kids. They have a lot of friends among children in France, in Germany, in Belgium, in Netherlands, in the UK. And they will return home, and they will bring all their experience, all their knowledges back home, and they will, change everything. And this is my biggest hope, because those people, they spent several years, unfortunately, but yeah, they spent several years abroad. At the same time, they gained a lot of knowledge, a lot of great experience, a lot of best practices from civilized, from developed countries, and they will bring all that back home.
I should give you a heads up here. This might be sort of quite scary, not necessarily for you because you're a modern man. But I was observing my cousin near here had a family staying with them. There was the mother, the daughter, who was in her, I guess, 30s, and a son. And she very, acutely watch the internal behaviors, the fact that my cousin's husband does the washing up, and he does this and that, and he puts the kids to bed, and the mother's standing on the sidelines going, oh, your man doesn't do this, right? When we're getting back, either he changes or you have to get rid of him.
Yeah, but people are different. Here on Facebook, I believe I was subscribed to one of the communities. It was prior to the big invasion, and it was when my son was born. The community about like dads doing everything, because it's something very, very familiar to me and to you, I believe. So people are different, but the main thing is not only all the knowledge, all the experience gained abroad will help our generations to develop Ukraine, but also it's a huge uniting factor for Europe, uniting factor for free world as we know it, because those many relations between our people and people from abroad, they form this very, very strong friendship, and this is very important.
I think it absolutely is, and I think that will endure, given how these bonds were formed of friendship. People spending a lot of time with each other, often finding out as much about themselves as they are about the other person, letting an unknown family from a war zone into your house for 3, 6, 9 months, 12 months comes with its own challenges. It's not something anyone was expecting. It's not something that most people have ever done before. But the sort of bonds created in that period, I think, are going to last for decades. It's quite a fascinating process.
Yeah, plus I would like to add that currently Ukrainians who went to the European Union as refugees, European Union gave them opportunity to stay on the territory of the European Union, work without the need of being registered as refugee or whatever. Basically, they were given the same rights as citizens of the European Union. And I think this is one of the coolest decisions they could make because, first of all, there is no, there's absolutely no resource, no human resource to process almost 10 million refugees in the European, like it's impossible. And on the other hand, giving those people opportunity to work and study is very cool for local economics, in my opinion. So the EU only benefits from Ukrainians working abroad and studying abroad, and of course Ukrainians benefit because they are not abandoned. You know, even those who don't live in inside of European families as guests, they still have chance to work and to upkeep themselves.
And don't be too humble. I mean, one of the reasons this has worked, one of the reasons why there isn't huge pushback from local societies is because they very quickly realized that Ukrainians love to work. Ukrainians like to solve problems, they like to learn, and they want to work. I mean, that's the culture that people have brought with them is something that has been extremely positive for the societies they've joined.
Yeah, we're not afraid of hard work one way or another. So yeah, but also Ukraine is known for our very efficient IT sector. And Ukrainian IT specialists are very much valued everywhere. So it's not only about physical work, but also intellectual work. And yeah, I'm very glad that Ukrainians found this opportunity to integrate into the European Union and free world, as we say, because again, it shows this tremendous unity, unity of decent people who stand against tyranny, against dictatorship and terrorists. And, Russian terrorism is so outdated in the modern world. It should not exist. Things that happen in Donbass, in Crimea, things that happen in African countries nowadays, they should not exist in the modern world because we had much a lot of other problems that required solution. Global warming, again, famines in African countries, Ukraine as a producer of grain, crops, food, could also help solve this problem. But we have to solve different problem nowadays, and which nobody expected, which nobody, looked forward to, and yeah, unfortunately, this is what we have to face nowadays.
And this brings me on that idea of Ukrainians learning and not approaching the world with this attitude of exceptionalism or arrogance. That seems to me that these are perfect values we need in order to adapt to what is going to be a challenging future and the kind of technologies that we need for it and societal changes. What I find really fascinating, because I do, and I don't expect anyone in Ukraine to have to do this. I know some do, but I go out of my way to listen to almost everything that the so-called Russian opposition puts out. I go to talks, etc. I mentioned the Khodorkovsky one. He's just produced a book. I'm going to do a full episode. I've got the book waiting for me. I'm going to do a full analysis of it because I think it's incredibly important to see what they're planning so that we can get ready for the inevitable disaster or failure. What really jumps out at me, though, apart from the abstractions about democracy and whatever, and we're going to implement European style institutions, and it's all going to happen by magic. Navalny has the same kind of magical thinking, unfortunately. What really jumps out, however, is the fact that none of them mention Ukraine. None of them mention the techniques and the experience, the struggles, the failures, the continued attempts, the multiple revolutions, the development of institutions, the fact that so many disciplines like journalism were just completely scrapped from the ground and built from scratch from the ground up in order to, remove the Soviet mindset and way of thinking. There is a whole series of experiments that have gone on in Ukraine of how to de-Russify and de-Sovietize your society, what works and what doesn't, and what kind of effort and energy you have to put into it. And yet I have not once heard a single Russian oppositionist mention either Ukraine or its experience or a process, a specific individual process. Ukraine did this, this was the result, this is how we can reproduce it in Russia. I've just punched my microphone. I'm getting quite agitated. This disturbs me because there's a laboratory of democracy on Russia's doorstep, and I do not think they're paying any attention to it.
They envy us. They're so envious, and Russian oppositioners, including Max Katz, beloved by millions of people on the West for some reason, he also says Ukrainian experience is not our experience. We don't need that. They shouldn't tell us what to do, of course, because they know better. They have the same old fart rule in Russia for like 20 years, and of course they know better. Yes, we had several revolutions in Ukraine in the past 20 years. Is it chaos? It's not. It's democracy. This is how it's forged. Your country and many, many other countries in Europe, currently they have their style. The style of life they have was because their ancestors had the same in their countries. They sacrificed their sweat, their blood. They had revolutions, they had wars because they were fighting for democracy, for what they have now. And now that their children and grandchildren living in France, living in Spain, living in Italy, and other countries, now they can enjoy peaceful life in a civilized world. This is how it's done, and this is the path that we had to walk as well in order to develop. But as for Russians, Russian Democrat disappears when the Ukrainian question appears. This is what we say. So you cannot just expect that Russian opposition will remove Putin and everything will change. No, it won't, because Russian zombies were raised for decades, if not centuries, like that. And Putin is not the problem; it's collective Putin in Russia.
And that's something I've been trying to dig into in recent interviews. It's something I'm going to try and explore in my first attempts to write articles and so on. And this is the idea that we fixate on, and this is a flaw in the West. We fixate on individuals, powerful individuals, as the explanation of what's going on. We try to characterize often people as either devils or angels. The media goes for kind of tropes and tries to simplify certain situations. So, of course, we look at Putin and his clownish elite and somehow think that once they're removed, everything will be okay. But what I think Khodorkovsky is completely aware of but of course doesn't want to point out is that his fortune, his power come from oil. They come from extraction industries. And actually the entire imperial vertical monolithic bureaucracy that runs Russia and has done for the past sort of 300 odd years is intimately connected with its business model, with its economic model, which is about raping the earth, which is about extraction rather than producing more complex products from raw materials. You know, they've got to the stage of flogging raw materials, and they've built a political system around that where everyone gets their little cut. You know, even pensioners in Siberia who get their pensions on time are plugged into this vertical architecture of people dependent on income from extractions. My point of view is, unless you destroy that economic base, that political system will carry on replicating itself, because there's no reason for people to move to a different culture of collaborating with each other, trusting each other, developing a system of law, which is required when you get to the manufacturing stage of an economy, the value add stage of an economy. And this isn't really much talked about, but I think not only would you have to defragment Russia entirely, you would have to completely destroy its extraction-based economy to force people. If they're going to make money, they're going to have to work together to do it. And I think that's one of the fundamental misunderstandings of Russia, is the lack of trust comes from the fact that they don't need it in order to make money based on their current economy.
I agree on that. Well, I think that Russians must understand that eventually this will happen. Most probably because Russian like oil resources and gas resources will be, again, it's theoretically, but they can be given to Ukraine as compensation for their invasion, and they will have to think on, what to do next. And there is only one way. They have to change their mindset. They have to elect democratic government. They have to become civilized, and they have to learn how to respect other nations. And this is the only way, because Russia is trying to develop, like their own way, this Russian world of mysticism and Orthodox Church and gods and whatever, and it has nothing to do with democracy. World lives in the democratic environment for like centuries, maybe some countries. Yeah, this is how the civilized world lives. And you cannot have like your own. No, you have to integrate, because you have to you have to do trade. You have to expand your economy and accept other economies and cultures, of course. And you basically have to learn how to be partner, right? Russia, with its special way, it reminds me of North Korea, the Chuchke, basically. It's the same, and it will not work in the modern society. It will never work.
And of course, the good thing is North Korea has an example of South Korea. It can see that other Koreans, people who have the same deep ancestry and culture as them, have managed to achieve this. Russians, I think, need to look at the early 20th century of their history, when they started to move beyond, the extraction mindset, and they started to develop more complex culture, more complex industries, and even though it's not fully formed, a certain legal framework that underpinned a much more modern economy. So there are examples they could look to. They're not doing that, but I think hopefully some people will start to sort of figure this out and really properly examine their own history in a way that is not mythologized. Well, I don't want to end talking about Russia, because that's always very impolite. Whenever talking to an Ukrainian, to talk too much about the land next door. Let's talk about the extraordinary achievements of Ukrainian innovation, and that is the renewed dominance of the Black Sea area. Despite Ukraine not having a navy, it seems that it is no longer a safe area for Russian terror tactics or machinery to operate.
Yeah, we put a lot of effort into developing sea drone, like naval drones, naval attack drones, not only attack drones, but we reached a lot of success, I would say, in this area. So Russians realized that they will not control the Black Sea as much as they did previously. And they have to hide their ships. They have to relocate them to other ports, other docks, because they know that there's like different threats out there right now. Underwater drones, missiles, especially some new missiles that I've heard that we received, and by the way, successfully used yesterday, and things like that. So
that's been widely reported. I know you're being a bit cagey there, but there is a strong rumor that attackers are in operation, and I think it's been hinted at as well by the Ministry of Defense. Certainly, there seems to be some fairly spectacular fireworks in Berdyansk and other areas. Do we know anything about the equipment that has been vaporized there? It seems that some rather expensive helicopters. I mean, that also makes for great NAFO memes and so on, but strategically, how important is the strike that we are hearing about?
It's very important on first place psychologically, because Russians realize that missile strikes are the game that can be played by both players. And they realize that their troops will no longer be safe anywhere on the territory of Ukraine. And of course, we destroyed, like, from judging from the screams that I saw in the Russian media yesterday, I think they've lost quite a few very valuable pieces of equipment, helicopters, ammo storages. Ammo storage in Luhansk was detonating until like almost afternoon, and we're talking about Russian officers again who were lost in a strike. So it's both very beneficial for Ukraine, not only in terms of destroyed Russian vehicles, but also because psychologically Russians now understand that they can be eliminated in any part of Ukraine, and no air defense saves them from demise.
And already I can see many newspapers speculating about how many Ukrainian lives will be saved by doing this, because Russia is no longer able to do, well, it couldn't really do combined arms anyway. They don't seem capable of that sort of complex strategy, but they did have air power that they could bring to bear to help sort of fortify their defensive Surovikin line. That now is under question. The real question, and this is one that I think those who are really following this has to put to their own leaders, is if these munitions were provided 3 months ago, 6 months ago, they could have saved countless Ukrainian lives, and they could have brought this war to a much swifter conclusion. Now, I know people don't like sort of, showing ingratitude and that kind of nonsense, but it's important, isn't it, to make our leaders understand that their slow decision-making is costing Ukrainian lives, and that has to stop.
I'm gonna try to be like devil's advocate here, and I'm gonna say this: people around the world had to wake up from this illusion of good Russian people oppressed by bad Russian government. They had to wake up from this illusion that we can be friends with Russians. we could have mutual respect. No, guys, Russians don't respect you. I had this poll on my YouTube and Twitter asking, how do you think do Russians respect your country, regardless of what country it is? And of course, 98% responded that no, Russians don't respect my country. Of course, it was based on someone's experience, I believe, or messages that people read from like media, etc. But people had to wake up from this illusion, and they had to understand that Russia is a terrorist. And unfortunately, not everybody woke up. But
well, let's call them out. I mean, Netanyahu needs to realize that Russia is not Israel's friend. I'm not going to get into the horrific complexities of what we're seeing unfold there, but what is quite clear is Netanyahu, even now, does not want to give up his special relationship with Putin. He has prevented Zelensky from coming to show support. Instead, on the same day, he chose to call his buddy Vladimir Putin, and yet, even though Russia is not yet directly implicated with the attack via Hamas, they are leveraging it for propaganda, and they clearly have a very close relationship with Iran. Their purchases of drones and missiles and munitions from Iran has emboldened that country and provided it with the income that almost certainly went to support the preparations for Hamas's attack. So why does he not get it? Why does Orban not get it? Why does Vučić in Serbia not get it? Russia is none of their friends.
One answer is that, for example, in Israel, there's still quite a few, we call them vatniks. We had them here in Ukraine. There's a lot of them in Russia. Some of them live like in the US, of course. People supporting Russian terrorism, people who were born in like Soviet Union, then they moved, but Soviet Union never moved out of them. And there's still quite a big number of people in Israel support Russian terrorism, and they have this Soviet Union of brain kind of disease, like we had, here in Ukraine for years.
Homo Sovieticus, I think it's called, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, those people, they still exist. They can vote. They exist in like Germany, in France, not too much. In the US, of course, there's quite big Russian diaspora of Homo Sovieticus, and of course Baltic countries, where they are used by Kremlin in order to destabilize political situation. Same with Israel. Luckily, majority of Israeli people realize that Russia is not ally, okay? Because Russia is allied with Iran, Russia is allied with Syria, Russia is allied with Hezbollah, with Hamas. They're not friends, okay? Russia bad, and they realize that West good, okay? Because people on the West, they support Israel, they support democracy. The US, of course, but this small, number of Homo Sovieticus, they're still there, unfortunately, and Kremlin tries to push its narratives through those people. So that's the problem, and it's a widespread problem, actually. Not only like it's not typical only for Israel. Like we had that in Ukraine, and unfortunately, we still have that.
Of course, and there will be a lot of people even in liberated territories who have now had many, many years of Russian propaganda. There'll be a whole generation of children who've actually been brought up with the sort of brainwashed curriculum. So this is not going to disappear overnight, this problem. I think that what makes what you're doing and others so incredibly important, using YouTube, this very popular medium, to fight the vatnik mentality. And it's why NAFO is so incredibly important as well.
Yeah, NAFO are amazing. As for my YouTube, I don't consider it like tremendously popular. You know, popular YouTuber has like 2 million subscribers on average. My number of subscribers is much humble, but this community is very strong and they're amazing people. You know, every time my friends need support, every time, for example, volunteers trying to fundraise for our units, for vehicles, for drones, my subscribers actively participate. So, like they are truly amazing people. And when I'm trying to make um, volunteers like I don't know Brandon or Harley or you know when I'm trying to make them more public, uh, I'm very glad that my community is very supportive towards people who try to help Ukraine, because my subscribers and those guys, they have the same goal basically. They're fighting for democracy and freedom. So at the same time, there's still a lot of challenges because you know Russian bots try to like restrict videos. They report me like hundreds of times a day, not only my YouTube videos but also my posts and Twitter and Facebook. I was blocked like dozens of times already on Facebook, and also as a YouTuber, I find it very hard to fight against a well-designed Russian informational machine that has millions of dollars, if like millions. I'm so pessimistic. That has billions of dollars that they can just pump from an oil pipe and invest into informational warfare. I like. I don't have that, unfortunately. That's why I'm trying to do as much as I can. Um, and I'm really happy to see what Naval does, because NAFO guys they're amazing. You know, Russians invested billions into creating bot farms. They invested billions into creating software to control those bot farms. They invested into creating narratives. They invested into focus groups to study, you know, Western mindset and best ways to influence Western mindset, and you know, basically best ways to implement and integrate their narratives into Western mind. NAFO, like it's a phenomenon. It's you know, this phenomenon is as important as phenomenon of you know people uniting all over the world around Ukraine.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And of course, the attacks on Berdyansk are producing some absolutely priceless memes, which I can't post here, but I'm sure people can discover those on Twitter. My favorite one is Pavarotti overlaid onto the explosions of the Russian airfield with all the little Shiba Inu dogs intercut in a theater with little tears appearing in their eyes from emotion. I mean, there's some classics appearing from that. To finish up, I want to say thank you to everything you do. You and Anna especially are absolute beacons for Ukrainian culture and values. I think everyone on the channel appreciates what you do, and I think it has a far bigger impact than you even imagine or give yourselves credit for. It's an incredible way to rouse international support and get people really behind Ukraine with humor, with trust, with openness, and with love. And thank you for this, and thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you so much.